Okay, so are you starting to see the links? Let's do a little exercise because you've been sitting for a little bit and you might be sitting for a little bit longer. Sorry, I can't really see. So if you're starting to see the links, if you can, and you're very passionate, perhaps you've already been working on this for the last 20 years and you're good to go, yes, I see the links. Not yet. If you're starting to see the links but not sure yet, but starting to see the links, go, yeah, I see it. If you're not sure, go, not yet. If you're not convinced yet, wait till the end of the summit to say yes or no. But if you're at no right now, go, I'm not sure. Go, show me. Yes! Wow, okay, awesome. Great. I'm glad. And hopefully we'll hear more from you on that yay, on what you're already doing and how you're approaching this yourself. But first, and to facilitate your role of messenger, like Catherine asked us to be, we have 3 fantastic speakers, as Natalie said, that will help us ground the work that's being done here with this global mindset in mind. So this isn't something that's specific to here. Climate change is everywhere, and we're all affected by it in many different ways. And organizations have taken it upon themselves too to get that work done. So our first speaker is Kristiana Bruneau. She is the International Policy Specialist with UNICEF Canada. And her work focuses on rights-based policy advocacy and impact-driven resource mobilization. So we'll hear what that actually means from Kristiana in a bit. Her background is in child and adolescent health and nutrition, as well as youth-focused sexual and reproductive health and rights. So let's hear it from Kristiana.
I have the advantage of going first, so everyone else can just be better than me. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for coming out. I'm Kristiana. I work for UNICEF Canada, and what I guess a little bit of what that means. So when we work for rights-based, or we look at rights-based policy for children and adolescent health and nutrition and well-being globally, it means that we're fundamentally grounded in human rights, in what is foundational to each human's needs and how that relates to their well-being. And when we ground policy in human rights, you ultimately realize the best outcome for each human. So that's basically the foundations of my background and what I bring to my job and my work, and at the end of the day, realizing human rights for everyone, and especially children and adolescents who are our most vulnerable, and then that's intersected with gender and with other intersections of vulnerability and oppression. So that's basically it. And when I look about high impact resource mobilization, we're looking for resources that have the highest impact. So when we're talking about, I work for UNICEF, we mobilize lots of donors. At the end of the day, we want to ensure that money is getting to the populations that we are fundraising for, and it's actually making an impact. So when I say high impact resource mobilization, it's ensuring that the interventions that those resources are going to actually have the impact, and that there's actually results in which we can measure, and there's evidence of it in those results. So that's also what drives me, and that's what the message I bring to the Canadian government when we ask for them to support programs abroad. So Natalie had asked for us to be storytelling in our slides, be less PowerPoint centric, but I'm very PowerPoint centric. I rely heavily on PowerPoints, which is weird for me. And I was thinking about girls' education. My background is in nutrition and health for children and adolescents. I worked in Southern Africa. I was in Swaziland, now Eswatini, for 2 years working with youth, especially young women, in sexual and reproductive health and comprehensive sexuality education, and making sure that they had the tools, and I won't go into family planning too much, but making sure that they had the tools to realize what they need to do to realize the future in which they had envisioned for themselves. And I was like, how am I going to talk about education? My background's in health and nutrition. And when I was thinking about the conversations that I have had with young women, whether the conversation is a negative one or an aspirational one, when I think about the trajectory of our relationship and where things went wrong or what the impact of something was adversely in their life, you can bring it back to education. Unplanned pregnancy, HIV infection, abusive relationships, unable to realize their dreams and potential, it all comes back down to A, maybe a lack of education, or B, dropping out early for their schooling, and how that had a long-term effect on them. So I realized that actually my background is sort of in education, just in an indirect way. So, like Catherine says, education is one of the foundational elements that can break intergenerational poverty. It has a multiplier effect. When women are educated or they can realize full education, they are healthier, they have children later, they get married later. When they do have children, their children are healthier and they're higher educated. They get to participate in the economy at a greater level. They get the skills and the technical capacity to be at decision-making tables. They get access to spaces to their community in a completely different way, which is really great because the data shows us that when women are able to join at the decision-making table, the byproduct is a solutions that are peace-centric, they're sustainable, they're cooperative, they're collaborative, and they're longer lasting. And you can see how that would have a link to climate action in the way that we address it in a sustainable way. The other thing that I'm still rambling. The other thing that we don't talk about or we don't think about is that school as a structure is a safe space. It's a space where young people can feel nurtured, they can feel a sense of routine, they can feel a place where their voice is being heard and being grown, and they can be developed as leaders, as decision makers. And that could have an impact on changing their perceptions about themselves and their capabilities. And that's instrumental for young women and girls. Okay, we can take it.
How about men?
We can talk about that after.
No, but men, it happens to men. Too.
It's true, it does, for sure. So we can skip this. That was my preamble. So just before we get into the barriers that face girls, let's just talk about the reality of girls' education globally. Girls in lower income countries have less access to school than boys. And as Catherine says in the video, that disparity is increased even in secondary school. So as she said, 130 million girls globally do not have access to education.
What would that be, 103 girls?
130 million girls?
Yes, like exact, like grade 1, 2, 3, or 7, 8, 9, or 10.
Oh, what's the like age range?
Yes.
I think that's
5 to 17.
5
5 to 17.
to 17 for girls. Yeah, 5 to 17 years old. Thank you. In conflict areas, the number of adolescent girls out of school is 90%, and that's a shocking statistic when you consider the rate and length of conflicts that are occurring in our world. With every passing day, the number of conflicts and the length of conflicts is increasing. In sub-Saharan Africa, only 40% of 40% of adolescent girls are out of school, and that's nearly half. And they did a study and they found that only 8% of the poorest women in low-income countries said they completed secondary high school from 2010 to 2015. So there are like 6 larger kind of bucket barriers that face girls in accessing school. And you might see that when we go into them a bit, that there's a bit of crossover, that they kind of are interlinked, and there's especially poverty, you can see kind of is an underlying driver of many of the barriers. So one of the key barriers is poverty. So even when schools may be free, which many of them are not, but even when they are free, there's still the cost of uniforms, there's school supplies, menstrual hygiene products, and when parents are making an economic choice of which gendered child is going to be a better investment in sending to school, often it's the boy child that's privileged if the decision is made on family income. And just to say that girls are often kept at home to contribute to family or household income. The other is gender inequality. So like we said, girls are they're often kept at home to aid in housework and care for their siblings and family. So child marriage and early pregnancy. So it's common in many countries that girls are married off as child brides, or they find themselves in situations where they become pregnant at an early age. And if they're married off or they're pregnant, they often are forced to drop out of school. Violence is another key barrier. So if they're not facing violence getting to school, at school, they can be subject to bullying, from abuse, physical or sexual, from teachers and peers. Violence from peers and sexual and physical abuse. Lack of safe and private girls-only toilets. We kind of take this for granted, but in some locations, there isn't gender-segregated bathrooms, and sometimes they don't even have locks. And so there's a multitude of issues there. One of which is, off the top, just the risk of physical or sexual abuse in the latrines. There's no proper lighting, if there's no lock on the doors, it's not private. Girls don't feel safe, they don't want to go, they don't want to attend the school if they feel they're at risk. The other issue is that we don't think about is that when girls go through puberty, they go through menstruation, and if they don't have a private space in which they feel they can deal or manage their menstruation in a way that they feel safe and have dignity, they often will just not go to school because they feel embarrassed. And so this is kind of a key thing in which we don't necessarily think about, but it's one of the key 6 barriers. And lastly, the distance to school. So if school is far away and transportation is minimal, and children and girls are on foot walking to school, it increases the amount of time they're spending getting to school, but it also increases the risk of physical and sexual violence. So I can talk about what UNICEF Canada has been doing. So after some assessment of where we could make the most impact, we focused on 4 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa with the goal of reaching 500,000 girls with education in 4 countries over 4 years. And so the barriers that we face, that we sort of honed in on, are to end child marriage, to stop gender-based violence, to support menstrual hygiene management, to provide nutrition, pregnancy care, protection from HPV, that's human papillomavirus, and HIV, and the advance girls' education and skills. So just before, the project is called Undaunted. So I have a video here. This is a video from Uganda. So if you want to know the countries, Tanzania, Ghana, South Africa. Sorry, I don't work on this project. Tanzania, South Africa, Uganda, and Ghana. And this is it's Tanzania, South Africa, Uganda, and Ghana. So this is Irene's story, and she's from Uganda. And so,
my name is Uncle Atuano Aye. I am 14 years old and I am 100%. I get up, I sweep the compound. I come to school at around 7, then we start our new lessons at 7:30. Schools are so important to me because I want to get educated and I want to pay my young sister's school fees in the future. I want also that poverty in our country should be ended. At times I don't come to school because of school fees when they chase me at home and I feel doesn't have money. Guys, I used to experience when they are menstruating. At times, boys laugh at them and they go back home. They stay home. They drop out of school and they don't want school. That leads to early marriage and early pregnancy, which is affecting most girls in Mire. The children are now girls don't fear menstruation. Whenever it starts, when they even know that at school, they go to the senior one teacher, they change their clothes, and they put on clean pants, and they feel comfortable in the class. That change has helped me not to get ashamed when I'm menstruating. Yes, I feel more confident. I thank the people in Canada because they have helped the children in Mireskandari, the girls in Mireskandari from dropping out of school, and that has encouraged the girls of Mireskandari to concentrate in their studies. That's why I thank UNICEF.
Sorry, it's a bit sappy. The video was made for the donors to that project, who are Canadians, just like everyone in the room, who have put money towards this project, and it's actually a unique project because it's one in which the Canadian government has partnered with us on. So it's basically a matched project to centralize access to education for girls. So just to go over the projects briefly, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but so just to tell you some impacts of the work. So in Uganda, the goal was to enhance 210,000 adolescent girls' access to education in the West Nile region. And the activities improve wash facilities in 40 schools. So wash facilities are hand washing stations, latrines that are gender segregated, areas in which girls can wash that are separate and private, so that they can deal or manage their menstruation in a way that they feel more safe and comfortable, and improve education in 550 schools. And so in the 2018, we improved wash facilities in 7 schools, and 630 teachers and 56 school clubs were trained. And one of the interesting things about the school clubs is there's a part of that story where they're making reusable menstrual pads from found products, and the boys and girls are doing it together. It's part of a health club activity. And what's really interesting about this health club activity where they're building this together, it's 2 minutes, holy moly. The boys and girls actually talk about these issues. And the boys are curious, and they ask, and it's in a very indirect and kind of organic way. The kind of the things that make the barriers in which girls face in going to school, and with the stigma that they face from their peers, is sort of addressed inadvertently. And so it's kind of a cool, neat activity that has had a byproduct effect. So we can move on to South Africa. So 105,000 adolescent girls improve HIV/AIDS education in 65 schools and STEM job shadowing opportunities. And so in 2018, there was 43,200 adolescents educated on HIV/AIDS, and 1,300 girls were trained with 36 new companies. And so the next phase is Tanzania and Ghana. So in Tanzania, we're going to prevent 50,000 girls from dropping out of school. We're providing teacher training, community support, school bursaries, and then in Ghana, 21,000 girls to complete their education. And these will be rolling out this year. And we can skip. If you have more questions about what UNICEF does broadly about, it includes interventions like the ones that I've talked to. There's also much more. There's specific, there's conflict specific, there's emergency specific, there is barrier specific interventions. It depends on the country, it depends on the need, and it just depends on what the greatest intervention is to get those girls into school and to stay in school. So we can skip that if you want. So I guess one of the things that Natalie really wanted me to kind of hone in on is what we can do as Canadians. I'm not here to ask you to donate to UNICEF, but I am here to talk about the election that's coming up. Yeah, no, and I won't get in deep. But how many here know that on October 21st we're likely going to have another federal election? Yeah. Well done. And the election hasn't been called, but we know that the campaign has started inadvertently. We had NDP 2 weeks ago launch their platform, so we know they're getting ready, and we have all the barbecue invites from the Liberal Party already in our mailboxes. So it's happening. But in all these conversations that we're already hearing, how many times, from just a show of hands, have we heard young people, girls, children in Canada mentioned as a key priority for any of these candidates? Just a show of hands. You've heard?
Yeah.
That's great.
Greta Thunberg.
Oh yes, Greta, yeah, she's very vocal, she's great.
But that's just very, people know what I'm sure.
That's true, yeah, they do. So we all have this power. 8 million people in this next election will not be able to vote. And guess who they are?
Young people.
Children and youth under 18. They will not be able to vote. But the elections will directly impact their lives in this country. It'll impact their ability to address the issues that we're here to talk about, and it will directly impact their lives going forward in this future. They should be part of the conversation, and we should also be demanding that they are part of how candidates envision this country's future as well as our role globally. So UNICEF Canada is launching a campaign. You do not have to participate in this campaign. It's called Vote for Every Child. We're launching on July 3rd, officially, and it's basically just a call to action to get candidates to prove to us how they're going to centralize or prioritize children and youth in their vision of Canada. And you don't have to agree with what we're asking the Canadian government to do or the candidates to do, but if we demand, if we ensure, if we echo this call to action, we can change the conversation about ensuring that they're going to prioritize and invest in children in Canada and the world. So this is the hashtag. Use it whenever you want. When you're tweeting out to a candidate, to the leaders, Vote for Every Child, you're putting children on the ballot yourself this October. Here's a link. It is currently a letter to all the leaders, the party leaders, and in it is basically what UNICEF Canada is asking the Canadian government to prioritize for our global role. But coming July 3rd, it will include Canadian asks for Canadian children as well. So if at the end of the day I have a sign-up sheet if you'd like to receive more information about how you can advocate for children and youth in Canada and in the world, sign that sheet and we'll ensure that you have the tools and information to do so.
That's fabulous.
Wow, there you go, solutions, and making your life easier to be advocates and to take those issues forward in your own community. Thanks for that, Kristiana.